Everyone was stunned when the little girl asked her question during the interview with Donald Trump. It happened in one of the large television studios where he often gave interviews on various topics. The host was ready to discuss politics, the economy, but no one could have imagined that they would get such a question from a child. The girl, no older than 7, sat next to him in the studio. She had big eyes full of curiosity, and she was dressed in a simple blue dress with white shoes. At the moment the cameras started rolling, she quietly raised her hand. Trump, as always confident, smiled and invited her to ask her question. "Mr. Trump, who is God?" she asked with innocent curiosity. Trump felt uncomfortable. This was not a question that could be answered with typical political jargon. His gaze clouded, and he paused for a moment. Everyone in the studio held their breath. How could he answer such an important, yet simultaneously complex, question? The host nervously glanced at Trump, while those in the audience began to whisper, waiting to hear what he would say. Would he give a simple answer? Or try to avoid the question? Trump smiled again, but this time less confidently. God is something that each of us understands in our own way, little one. Some people believe in God, others do not. It's a deep question, and for everyone, it can have a different meaning. It's a matter of faith. The girl paused for a moment and asked again, and who decides who is right? Her voice sounded even more serious than before. This question put Trump in an even more difficult position. How could he answer such an important and philosophical question in front of the entire audience? He sighed and began to think about his response, but before he could say anything, a loud remark from the audience interrupted the atmosphere. The remark from the audience was so loud that everyone in the studio turned their heads. It was one of the journalists present, who clearly couldn't remain silent any longer. "Excuse me, Mr. Trump, but this question can't be dismissed so easily. Perhaps you have more to say about your faith, as you are the leader of a country that espouses religious freedom," he said, looking at Trump as though demanding an answer to something much deeper than just a general explanation. Trump paused for a moment, clearly trying to find words that wouldn't spark unnecessary controversy. "You're right," he said after a pause. "I believe in God. For me, this is a question of great importance, because we live in a country where everyone has the right to choose. I've always supported religious freedom, but I also believe that everyone has the right to decide what they believe in." The girl, who was almost disappointed by his response, raised her hand again. "But Mr. Trump, if God exists, why do bad things happen? Why do people suffer?" Her question was so innocent, yet it carried a depth that couldn't be ignored. This time, Trump couldn't give a simple answer. He looked at the journalists again, showing some tension. Everyone in the studio realized that this question went beyond politics and touched on something much bigger, profound issues of existence, morality, and religion. People in the audience even started waiting to see what he would say, as it was a true opportunity for reflection on the meaning of life, not just political slogans. Trump cleared his throat, as if searching for the right words. "It's a tough question," he said after a short pause. "There are difficult moments in life, and we don't always understand why they happen. But I believe that through hardships, we grow and change. No one can say why some people suffer more than others, but we can try to help each other. And everyone has the right to find the strength in their heart to overcome these difficulties." The girl, who had been sitting with a serious expression, now smiled as if satisfied with his answer, even though it didn't fully satisfy her deep question. "Thank you, Mr. Trump," she said, and returned to her seat, leaving an uncomfortable silence in the studio. Trump looked at her and for a moment felt uncertain. He was the leader of the country, but this moment showed him how little he truly knew about the profound questions people face every day. And although he was ready to answer political questions, sometimes the real question came from things that couldn't be answered directly. And so, after this interview, which at first glance seemed like just a simple conversation, many people began to reflect on questions they hadn't even tried to ask themselves before. They started paying attention to their own beliefs and were convinced that these questions didn't have easy answers. The girl left the studio with a smile on her face, not understanding just how much a simple question could make the whole world think. A few weeks after that interview, the little girl was still thinking about her questions. She often sat in the kitchen with her mom, asking why the world was so complicated and why people couldn't always find simple answers. Her mom always explained that it wasn't just the answers that mattered, but the journey we take while seeking them. These conversations made the girl wiser for her years. She began to understand that life isn't just about questions and answers, but also about experiences that are shaped through our feelings and relationships with others. She no longer tried to find simple answers to complex questions but started to believe that it was important to find her place in the world and try to help others, even if we can't change all the difficulties around us. The girl thought about this one special day when she saw her mom helping a neighbor who was going through a tough time. Her mom didn't have ready answers, but her words of support, her ability to listen, and just being there became a great comfort for the neighbor. It was a moment for the girl when she realized that helping others was also a form of faith, even if we can't explain everything. And although the question about God never received a clear answer, for the girl, it became a symbol of the constant search, the importance of support and understanding. She no longer searched for simple answers, she started to accept that not all answers come immediately, but that doesn't mean we should stop. Meanwhile, the interview with Trump and the little girl became a widely circulated video that left people in awe. Many adults began to think about how important it is not to forget the essential questions that are often neglected in everyday life. The little girl's question about God became a reminder for many. We all, regardless of age or status, have the right to search for answers to life's profound questions. But what mattered was to keep searching and acting, even when the answers remained far beyond the horizon. A few months passed, and the girl found herself thinking more deeply about the lessons she had learned from her questions and conversations. She started to notice the small, everyday moments that shaped the world around her, the smile of a stranger, the quiet gestures of kindness. The way her mom always knew how to make others feel better. It was in these moments that she realized how much impact even the smallest acts of support could have. One afternoon, as the sun was setting, casting a warm glow through the kitchen window, the girl sat with her mom again. They were having their usual heart-to-heart conversations. This time, the girl's thoughts were about something she had never asked before. "Mom," she began slowly, "do you think we're supposed to change the world? Or just live in it the best we can?" Her mom put down the cup of tea she was holding, her eyes thoughtful as she pondered the question. She had been asked so many profound things over the years, but this one was different. It wasn't just a question about faith or morality, it was a question about how to live. "I think," her mom said, looking out the window as though searching for the right words, "that we can't change everything in the world, no. But we can try to make it better, one small action at a time. We can't fix the pain or suffering of the world alone, but we can ease some of it, for the people around us. And when you help others, it has a way of coming back to you, in ways you might not expect." The girl listened carefully, absorbing the simplicity of her mother's wisdom. She had always admired her mother's ability to bring comfort to others, to make people feel seen and heard, and now she understood the depth of that. It was about doing what you could, even when the answers were unclear. It was about being present, listening, and offering what you had, whether it was a kind word, a helping hand, or a moment of understanding. Her mom's words stayed with her over the next few weeks. She began to look at the world in a new way, noticing how people connected with one another through their actions, through the ways they cared for each other. The girl realized that helping others didn't always require grand gestures. Sometimes it was the little things, the smile, the act of listening, the moment when someone felt seen. One afternoon, as she walked home from school, she saw her classmate, a boy named Peter, sitting on the steps, looking upset. He was someone she didn't know very well, but she had noticed him around. Normally, she might have passed by without thinking much about it, but today something felt different. The question her mom had asked earlier echoed in her mind, what if I could make things a little better? She sat down beside Peter, unsure of what to say but determined to offer support. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked quietly, her voice kind but not intrusive. Peter looked up at her, surprised that someone had noticed. "I guess. I'm just having a bad day," he said, his voice a little shaky. And for a moment, there was silence. But the girl didn't mind. She just sat there with him, offering her presence. She didn't have the perfect words, but she was there. That was enough. After a few minutes, Peter started to talk, explaining what had been bothering him. The girl listened, offering quiet encouragement. It wasn't a solution, but it was enough to make him feel a little lighter. When they parted ways, Peter smiled at her, a small, grateful smile that spoke volumes. It was then that the girl understood. It wasn't about having all the answers or solving the world's problems. It was about being there for others, about sharing moments of connection and trying to make the world a little kinder. In doing so, she realized that she was learning what it truly meant to live with faith, not necessarily in a religious sense, but in the way she showed up for others and allowed others to show up for her. The interview with Trump and the little girl still circulated on the internet, and people often mentioned how her question had left an impact. But for the girl, the true impact came not from the attention or the video views, but from the quiet moments of connection she experienced every day. And so, the journey continued. She kept asking questions, kept reflecting, kept searching for meaning, not just in the big questions, but in the small, everyday ones that made life rich and full. She wasn't trying to change everything at once, but by helping others, by seeking answers, and by simply being there, she was slowly changing her own world for the better. And that was enough. As time went on, the girl grew older, but the lessons she learned during those early years stayed with her. She continued to ask questions, though now they were more about how she could make a difference, however small. She didn't wait for grand opportunities to come her way. Instead, she looked for moments where she could quietly help, be it by offering a listening ear, sharing a kind word, or standing by someone who needed support. Her bond with her mom only deepened as she grew, and the conversations they shared continued to shape the girl into a thoughtful, compassionate young woman. She understood now that life wasn't about having all the answers, but about making the journey meaningful through our actions and relationships. One day, years later, the girl, now a young adult, found herself sitting in the same kitchen with her mom, still pondering the deep questions of life, just as she had so many years before. Her mom looked at her, the same calm wisdom in her eyes. "You know, Mom," she said, "I think I finally get it. The world may not always make sense, and we might never have all the answers. But maybe that's okay. Maybe it's about finding the meaning in the search itself, in the way we help each other along the way." Her mom smiled warmly, the kind of smile that said everything needed to be said. "You've learned something important," she said softly. "It's not about the destination, but the journey. The way we treat others, the way we show up for them, that's what really matters." Years later, the girl, now a woman, would reflect on how far she had come since that fateful interview with Trump. The simple, yet profound, question she had asked so many years ago had set her on a path of constant growth and introspection. Her life had been shaped by the experiences she had, the people she had met, and the small moments that built up into something much greater than any one answer could ever be. And so, she continued to search. Not for definitive answers, but for ways to make the world a little bit kinder, one action at a time. She knew that the journey, the process of learning and growing, was where the true meaning lay. As she walked through life, she found joy in the simple things, listening to others, being present, offering help when needed. She understood now that even if the big questions never had clear answers, the small acts of kindness were what connected them all. And in that, she found peace. In the end, the search for answers never stopped, but it was no longer a burden. It had become a part of her, woven into the fabric of her life. And she was content, knowing that, in her own way, she was making the world a little bit better. The journey, as it turned out, was the answer all along.